That was our first experience with credit. So what happened was, once we couldn't pay, we couldn't. Once we harvest, we still didn't have no money. And then on top of that, we couldn't open up a bank account because we couldn't read, we couldn't write, so we couldn't go to the bank. So the landowners carried the money to the bank, and they deposited the money, and they brought us back credit. And that's absolutely true. That's what happened, and that was our first time and our first experience with credit. So we get into the 1900s. So they still bringing the credit in again. So during the 1900s, they came up with redlining. But anyway, by the way, the credit they were using was called credit leasing back in the late 1860s, 1870s, 1890s. It was called credit lien. That's what they was calling it back then. So in 1930s, when we start, trying to own something again using credit, they would put they were redline areas that we wanted to buy in. They would put they were redline. The banks was giving the appraisals money to go out and redline areas. Anywhere the blacks was at, they were redline. That was the redline areas. So they wouldn't lend anything in those areas. Those areas there was not to be lent any money to blacks in. The red line, they call them red line areas. So they use the word credit again. So the only thing they would let us buy was small items and cars, but that was for the loan in the 70s and 80s. Because that went on for a long, long time, up to 74. All that red line and stuff. But anyway, I don't know that y'all know or not. Jacksonville had a lot of red line areas in there also. It was called La Villa. La Villa was where over 70% of the blacks stayed at, and those areas was red line. My daddy bought a house. I born in La Villa, and then my daddy moved out of La Villa in 1960, and he bought us a house in Grant Park in the OE area, and that house that he bought for it was on $60,000. It was only $6,000. He bought it at 15% interest rate, and so it never stopped. They never stopped controlling us with the word credit. So and then did y'all know that we had a Black Wall Street here? It was called La Villa. It was I'm gonna tell you where La Villa was, where the Black Wall Street was at. This was back in the 1990s, the 1890s. Sorry, in the 1890s, where Flagler owned it. This guy named Flagler, he owned a lot of the rail stations down there. He owned a lot. He had a railroad company. He had a lot of people. He had about 2,000 people down there. Had a lot of black people. A lot of black people back then worked in the railroad station. But the La Villa went from the red line areas. That was the biggest red line area in Jacksonville. That red line area went from 95 to Martin Luther King Parkway, back east, back to Jefferson Street, came across, went all the way to Riverside, up to Park Street, came across and went back to 95. That was the red line area. That was La Villa. That was where black people stayed at, La Villa. That was a thriving community. You had a lot of that. That's where the Rich Theater came in. A lot of entertainment down there. You had a big African American insurance company down there. That was a thriving area until they brought I-95 through there, and they started putting all these cars. So that split up the Villa area. That destroyed the La Villa area. That destroyed everything that we had and worked and made down there and created down there. So a lot of we heard the urban spoil. A lot of the people started moving out of La Villa into like Grant Park areas, in 09, 08 areas. So I don't know that y'all know that or not, but that's what happened back then. So I just want to give y'all just a little history about credit. So through that time, we never was treated right with the credit because it was used for control. So we never used it. So a lot of people say, well, you don't know about credit. No, we don't. Because we was never taught anything about credit. first place. That's why we don't know anything about credit, because we were never taught about credit. So, just give you a little history of it. I'm not trying to make anybody mad, but that's what how they was using credit. They were using credit against us to take advantage of us in the red line areas in the 1900s. They was lending us money, but it was at a high interest rate. But we still couldn't read, and they was charging us a high fee for everything that we bought on credit. Because Tucker Brothers was a mortgage company here that financed a lot of the houses in the black areas. Um, but they was told not to lend money in the black areas back during that time. But they only, like I said, they only give us the small items when they lend us money. It was only small stuff like maybe some furniture or something really small, like a small, something really small. I didn't really know what they were buying, but because I didn't know what they were buying because I was back there, but I didn't really know what they were buying back in the '60s. But anyway, so the first ebook that I'm gonna write, it's gonna call the Black Credit Playbook. Master your money, own your future. So next time I talk to y'all about that, next time I do a video, we're gonna talk about that book there. That's a really good book that I wrote, and I'm gonna write some more to help y'all learn how to use credit, because we don't know how to use credit. We don't even know how to build credit. A lot of us know how to build credit, but we still don't know how to build credit. We still don't know how the credit. Credit is like gold. It's like gas that we put in a car. You can't go nowhere without gas, because you got to put it in the car. You can't go nowhere. You can't own nothing without credit. You got to have credit. You got to have credit and money. You got to have credit first, because a long time ago, black folks were so fed up with the word credit because it was getting done so bad with it, they started borrowing money from their cousins and from their churches and from their friends and stuff like that. That's how we was using credit that way. We didn't deal with the banks because the banks wouldn't let us have an account. We Majority of the blacks couldn't read. Like I said, I'm not trying to turn this into a history lesson. I'm just telling the truth about the word credit. But like I said, the credit was introduced, just remember, back in 1520s, 1520s, 1560s. Then it was brought over here during that time, from the 15 to the 1800s. That's when it brought over here, during that time. Back in the 1790s, a certain class of people was, qualified as citizens here, and we wasn't, because a long time ago, we came. A lot of us came from England over here. A lot of us was over here, but the ones that came from England, they was slaves for life, and our counterparts was indigenous slaves. They had rights, but we didn't have no rights. So we never had any rights. So, and we never learned about credit from the 1800s until now. Credit is not taught in school. Remember, I don't know, a few of y'all may remember, the only thing they taught us about buying anything in school was how to balance a checkbook. That was the last thing that I learned in school, how to balance a checkbook. So, but they don't tell us about how to actually build credit. And the way we building credit around here, we doing it wrong. You getting the credit at the wrong places. So we're gonna talk about that too on the next video. So this is Charles Garland from One Word Realty. I talk to you. I see you on the other side. Bye bye.